an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The former mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, has taken to Twitter to apologise unreservedly for saying a shadow defence minister suffering from depression should get psychiatric help and pop off and see a GP after he'd criticised his appointment to Labour's Defence Review. Kevan Jones, who's spoken publicly about his mental health issues in the past, said Mr Livingstone had caused offence to thousands of mental health sufferers with his words. Well, the row between the two Labour figures started after Mr Jones questioned why the former mayor, who's opposed to Trident, was given such an influential role alongside Maria Eagle, who is heading up the review. Allegra Strata is here with us now. Does it feel like this is the end now? Has it died down?
I don't think so. You have Ken Livingstone to your right. You can ask him in a second. But the pair were on Channel 4 News and Ken Livingstone basically said to Kevan Jones, you started it. And of the apology, Kevan Jones said to Ken Livingstone, you were forced to do it. So he'll tell you in a second, but I don't think they've quite made friends.
Where does this leave the broader question of the Defence Review and the Labour Party?
Kevan Jones was told Channel 4 News he wasn't clear exactly what role Ken Livingstone will be playing and how the two will work together. But this isn't just a debate about ill-advised comments made about mental health. This is going to the core of Labour's position on matters of war and peace, and there's two divisions it's throwing up. The first is on Trident. You have Jeremy Corbyn and Ken Livingstone, again, you'll talk about it in a second, who have one position on Trident, and it's opposed by the people who are in Labour's defence team, including Kevan Jones, and the party. So at the moment, this evening, we have the co-chairs of Labour's Defence Review, apparently with their irreconcilable views, but also possibly not even talking. Secondly, you have another division on Syria. Last night on this programme, the Labour MP Emma Reynolds said that she'd like a free vote. Ken Livingstone, while we were on air, said she wouldn't be getting a free vote. She, pro-war, as he called her, if she wanted to vote in that way, she would be able to, but she'd have to defy the party leadership. Now, there is there not? Again, I think we'll talk to Livingstone in a second about this. There's a bit of an inconsistency here for lots of people in the Labour Party. They think for Corbyn's allies, they are allowed to be independent, to have their own views, and indeed possibly even have those views imposed on the rest of the party with something like Trident. But for people like Emma Reynolds, who wouldn't call herself a Corbyn critic, but appears to be, she's told she has to get in line. And the problem is this. Jeremy Corbyn said it has to be a gentle, new kind of politics, and it has to be a consensual new type of politics. Events in the last 24 hours undermine that.
Allegra, thanks. Let's see if we can unpick a little bit of that with Ken Livingstone. Thanks for coming in. Ken, it doesn't sound very consensual at the moment. Kevan Jones has said that you should apologise to all sufferers of mental health who you offended. Would you like to do that here?
If anyone's offended, I'm very sorry, but let's be quite clear.
Wait a sec. Does that mean it's their fault for being offended, or that you are genuinely sorry that you offended them with those slurs?
If anyone's genuinely offended, I'm very sorry about that. But the reality is, he started this row.
Sorry, is that an apology? I just want to get to the bottom of this, because it's a very odd type of phrase. Are you apologising to Kevan Jones?
If anyone's upset, I'm sorry about that. But I didn't start this row. I get up this morning and I find that a Labour MP is denouncing me in this role, saying I don't have any...
He's not denouncing, is he? He's questioning whether you're the right person for this job.
Why didn't he pick up the phone and ask me? Because I could have told him. For 5 years, when I was leader of the GLC, we oversaw civil defence in London. We had to plan for what would happen in a nuclear war. Millions of Londoners would have died. I lived with that. Then, after 9/11, we spent 4 years planning for the terrorist attack we knew were coming. Almost all my time when I've held a public office, there's been that threat of violence because of
So he should have picked up the phone to you. Did you pick up the phone to Maria Eagle to tell her that you were now her co-chair? She learned from Twitter.
I mean, it's not my job to do that. The Labour NEC decides this panel, and we've always had...
Well, why was it your job to go on Twitter and make the announcement when she didn't even know then?
I didn't go on Twitter and make the announcement. It must have been made formally by the party, because I'm a member of the NEC. I wasn't. I had journalists phoning saying, we hear you've been appointed to this. I said,
You said it at a book launch.
Yeah, but I did not do any Twitter about this. It was CND... people came along and said, you know, we think this is happening.
Was that an error not to just make contact with the person who will now be your co-chair for a fundamental defence review?
The simple reality is I'd actually left the NEC when that decision was made to appoint me. I found out about it later on. I assumed Maria Eagle had been told, but the simple fact is, Maria and Eagle, I go back to 1981. She invited me to come and talk to her student Labour
But you
club.
can
We've
see how
always
this
got on.
looks. She said today, it feels like the Shadow Defence Secretary has now got an older man in to mark her homework. That's excruciating, isn't
Well,
it?
if she said that, she's being very silly, because the reality is, if you're going to have a policy review, you need someone who represents that commitment to Trident, someone who's always been dubious about that. We've now got to look at the facts. We've got a very tight budget situation. The British Army now is smaller than at any time since before World War I. A lot of people, including myself...
So you're on opposing sides, clearly. She supports renewal of Trident, you don't. Could you be persuaded on that? Could you see yourself suddenly supporting Trident?
I want to see facts that suggest to me that this is the best way of spending our military expenditure.
So you could be convinced on that. You might come out of it saying, yes, Trident's a good idea.
If you're going into a policy review, you leave your previous preconceptions behind, your views behind. We're there to look at the facts. We need to look at, is this the best use of £20 billion? Or would it be better building up our armed forces?
Because a lot of people will look at this and say, you're basically Jeremy Corbyn's enforcer. You're like having an informant on the inside to make sure that she doesn't go astray on what she thinks.
In my time as leader, at the GLC and then as mayor, we always were living with terrorist attacks. I want to know, what's the best way of protecting the British people?
I understand that, but we're talking about the system that you take to get to it. Have you spoken to Maria Eagle today?
No, I haven't.
You haven't?
I spent all day... I've answered the phone 70 times.
But you haven't spoken to your co-chair on this at all?
We haven't organised any meetings or anything. All I've had all day is just a wave of media interviews and endless phone calls, about 70 so far, about all this. We'll sit down and we'll have a chat about it. But the thing is, we face a very tight budget. We've got to work out what's the best way of protecting Britain.
Okay.
Is it nuclear weapons?
So you haven't spoken to Maria Eagle yet. Emma Reynolds told us there should be a free vote on Syria was the right way to go. Do you agree with her?
Absolutely not. If you're talking about military action, the Labour Party has to have a view for or against it. Saying a free vote, saying the Labour Party doesn't have positions. Now, I support her right if she wants to vote against the whip, because I often did.
The trouble is, as you can surely appreciate, this points to a wider problem, doesn't it? When you're rowing with your own defence minister, when you're criticising other ministers, when you haven't even told the Shadow Defence Secretary she was aware of your role, it's chaos in the Labour Party at this time when people are desperate for leadership, they're desperate for cohesion, they know what they get from David Cameron, and when they come to Labour, they get a wheel of fortune. Anytime they spin it, something different comes up.
I didn't start this row.
I'm not talking about the row now, I'm talking about the perception to the public who are at this time feeling vulnerable, presumably, and want a bit of leadership from the opposition.
And that's
they're not
reality.
getting it.
We were told when Tony Blair took the decision to invade Iraq, the security services warned him and me, this makes you a target for terrorism. What we've got to do now over these next few months is decide, what's the biggest threat to Britain? Is it that Russia's going to launch a nuclear strike against us, or is it another wave of terrorists will come here and take lives like they did in Paris? I want a military system that protects the British people from being murdered by terrorists.
Ken Livingstone, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
I've been getting